Good afternoon. I am Francis Lagasse with Catherine Wells, and we are here for our second episode of Mavericks Challenging the Way We Age, Fostering Ingenuity in Senior Living. I am so fortunate and happy to announce we have a fantastic guest this afternoon, and her name is my co-podcaster, Miss Catherine Wells.
All right. Yes. Hi, Francis.
Hello.
Good to see you again.
It's great to be here, and we're going to start just kind of getting to know Kathy. Kathy brings a lot of creativity and ideas for our senior living community, so I thought it'd be really important that we begin to find out who Kathy is and how she got to this point in her life of wanting to make some huge changes in senior living. So, Kathy, why don't you tell me a little bit about your family?
Great. So I have aging parents, no surprise, and that's part of the reason that I got into this industry. As a software marketer for my entire career, I am very familiar with how software can make life easier, can bring efficiencies, and collaboration and communication. And about 10 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And when that happened, what I didn't realize is that slowly over those next 5 years, my life was going to change quite a bit. So it started out with just calling to check in. Hey, Mom, how you doing? Hey, Dad, how you doing? They were still living at home. And then over time, it was every single day checking in. And then it was talking with my brothers. Did you see that Dad wasn't paying attention to his medications? Did you see that Mom couldn't add the check at the restaurant the other night? So we started to get more and more involved in their daily life. And pretty soon, I was managing every detail of their daily life.
Wow.
And that's pretty tough to do when you're not there. Yeah. My parents lived in another city about 40 miles from here. Okay. And I live here in downtown Denver, so I couldn't just be there every single day. I had a full-time job, I have kids. Sounds like a lot of people in the sandwich generation, right?
So I think you definitely fit in that sandwich generation. You mentioned you had kids. How many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids. I have 4 kids. One of them is launched and out of the house. Okay. So the other 3 are living at home. And they're teenagers, so they're not small kids, but they still require, actually in teenage years these days, they require a different kind of attention.
So did that add to the stress? I mean, it sounds like in the beginning with your mom, it wasn't too much work per se, but did having the kids at home add another layer of stress on top of it, especially it sounds like the last 5 years for your mom?
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. And I would say that even 10 years ago when she was diagnosed, my kids were younger then. So I was still managing them, but it wasn't as much interaction with Mom at the time. So it was okay. And then over time, they're aging. They're going through their teenage years, which are not fun for them or for the parents. Yeah. And dealing with Mom through all of that. And then my parents, I think, like a lot of parents from that generation, my parents had been married a really, really long time. So they'd been married 50 years when she was diagnosed, 60 years when she passed. And they don't know how to live without each other. They've been together since they were 18 years old. So really for my dad to figure out what his life would look like without her was a very difficult thing. In our particular family, I have 3 brothers, and they're all older than me. I'm the youngest, but I'm the only girl.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that you kind of became the default caregiver or caretaker because you were the only female?
Yes.
Does that seem accurate?
Yes, and I think you'll see, and you know this, but you'll see in a lot of articles that they even affectionately call it the eldest daughter. Yeah. It's generally, it doesn't mean it's the oldest daughter, but a daughter usually is the one who steps in and takes POA and takes responsibility. And
why do you think that is? Why do you think the daughters are the ones that, or the women, quite frankly, that really take that kind of leadership role in this case?
It's a good question, and in general, and these are very, very, very general. In general, I think women are more nurturing. We're the moms. we're the ones taking care of our kids. We, oftentimes we still have kids at home, so then we start to take care of our parents too. I think we think about things a little bit differently than most men do, and I would say that my husband would agree with that. He had 3 sisters. His mother had Alzheimer's, and the sisters really were the ones who took care of Mom, and he was just on the phone. He was a phone call away, checking in kind of thing. But he knew that they had it handled and that they probably were going to do it better than he would. So again, it's very general, and I'll tell you a funny story. I was talking about Serenity Engage with a colleague at another company of mine, and I was explaining, it's usually the eldest daughter, and he said, hey, wait a minute, Tommy, Mike, John, Joe, Kevin, these are all men who took care of their parents when they were aging. They all happen to be gay men. And he said, I want people to know that we step in too, and that we're part of this aging phenomenon.
Do you think, going on with your Serenity app, why don't you tell us a little bit more? Because I know that's been a big focus for you as a chief executive officer of Serenity app. It's really been your way to improve engagement in senior living communities and improve, I'd say, transparency amongst direct care staff and executive of those senior living communities and family members. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Serenity Engage and really what is some of the key points of it?
Yeah, that's great. So to take the story about my parents and how I was semi-involved in the beginning, and then I was calling every day, and then we were checking in as a family with each other. To take that to the next step, pretty soon we were managing every detail of their daily lives. Before we even knew it, looked up and there we are, taking care of everything. Did Dad get his meds? Is Mom getting out of it? Did Mom get lost? Is it time to take away her driver's license? We were managing every single detail of their lives. And we did bring in some home care, some people to cook them meals, clean the house, maybe take them somewhere if they needed it. But then it was obvious they needed to transition to higher care, so they transitioned to a facility.
How was that? So with that part, how was that for the family?
Interesting, because 4 kids and a husband, my dad, right?
Yeah.
So there's 5 of us here surrounding my mom who have 5 different opinions on how this should go. In the end, what we did, because we didn't know, and I think this happens to a lot of people, we just didn't know any different.
Right.
We looked at the place that was down the street from my dad, so it was very close to him. It was in the city that they lived in, so Mom's friends could come visit.
Oh, okay.
We looked at one other place, but it wasn't a fair comparison,
Gotcha.
and so we immediately discounted that, and we just moved her into the place that was down the street.
Okay.
And it happened to be a national name, so it was an easy one to choose. So we did not. What I wish I would have known at that time is that you have a choice as family. You have a choice where you transition your parents. And if you can, you don't want to transition them multiple times because it's hard on them. And it's hard on you. So really taking the time to understand what all of the different options are available to you is really, really important. It's not just a brand name. The brand name means almost nothing. And what I've learned as being part of this industry, and I'm curious your thoughts, is that the brand name of some of the big national chains doesn't always mean they're part of that national chain. That there are property management companies that come in and manage. So you may not be getting the exact same care at different facilities that have the same name across the U.S.
Interesting. So that's interesting. So you're saying that because there's a national brand to it, you might have different operations than, let's say, someone in California.
Yep.
Because of a different local operator or local people involved?
Yes.
So that, to me, sounds like it can be very trying and challenging as a loved one, understanding, I guess, the quality and what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
Did that lack of clarity or lack of transparency trigger anything for you as a loved one making this, I'd say, life-altering decision for your family?
It would have if I had known about it at the time.
Okay. Okay.
But it does now because now I know. Now I know better.
How did you learn, or how did you figure out that you know more now? Have you done anything different?
Being in the industry, visiting different places, meeting people like you.
Is it okay if I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we edit this?
Yeah, we can edit anything.
It should have gone to sleep. I'm plugged in.
It's still recording. Okay. So I can't remember the question now.
Let's start.
Did it trigger?
Yeah, did it trigger anything? Oh, no, sorry. What you know now, what was the main reason you kind of learned that information you have today? What triggered that?
Yeah. So when I started rolling out Serenity Engage, part of that is part of the effort is networking. So getting out and meeting people in this industry and visiting and touring a lot of different facilities and communities, meeting people like you and understanding the different types of communities that exist. It's very clear to me that families don't know, and at the time that you're transitioning the person you love into a facility, the last thing you're thinking is, I really want to go spend a lot of time touring these facilities and learning the difference. So what happens a lot of times that I find with family members is they call a Place for Mom, or they call one of the local placement groups, and they get information from them, which is a really good start. I recommend, for what it's worth, I always recommend to family members, try to call someplace local, because if you're calling one of the local placement groups, they oftentimes, and ask these questions actually, oftentimes they go visit the facilities. They'll tour the local facilities. They know the owners and operators. They know the executive directors. They know the care team. So they can help fit you and your loved one with the right type of facility for your needs.
Do you think part of your experience that you were drawn to the national brand because you didn't know any better?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was the shiny penny. It was a brand new building. It was beautiful. We watched it being built. It was very convenient. So I would say those were probably the two main factors. It was very convenient to my dad, and it was a shiny penny. And we made a lot of assumptions without doing the research.
So I get this a lot from families. They make an assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, that a big, beautiful building assumes a great quality of care.
Yes.
Is that an assumption that your family made?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. So do you think as Americans we get lured into this idea that beautiful and extravagant and pretty means great quality?
Yes, I do. I think it is part of the American way right now. I think we look for, it's a very hard thing to transition a loved one into a facility, because it's like saying, I can't take care of you. It's a little bit of there's some defeat in there, there's some guilt. So a lot of our parents helped their parents through this stage. Their parents lived with them through their older stage in life. So there's some guilt with, oh goodness, I have to transition mom to a home because I have a full-time job, I have a husband, I have kids at home, I have dogs, I have my hobbies, I have other commitments in my life. So to look for the pretty place can make you lessen your guilt a little bit. So I think sometimes we justify that way. Yeah.
So it sounds, this term is going to come up a lot, is this caregiver guilt. Do you think that's a driving factor for why people choose something, is they want to assuage that guilt? Or
I think it's a factor. I think it's definitely a factor. Anytime we can alleviate any of our own caregiver guilt, we'll do that, because who wants to feel guilt? We want to think and know that mom, dad are in really good hands, and that we've made a good choice, and that sometimes we're spending their money because we've become their POA and we're managing finances. Sometimes they are on Medicare or Medicaid, and it's there are different options for that. Sometimes we're spending our own money to take care of them.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where the finances are coming. But I think in general, humans are looking for ways to not feel guilty or feel bad about doing something. I will say the one best piece of advice I ever got was from a friend of mine's husband whose mother had Alzheimer's. And he said, the time to transition your mom, Kathy, is not when she needs it. It's when you can't do it anymore.
It's a great line.
It really helped me a lot, and it helped me with the caregiver guilt.
Yeah. And I don't know, you'll know better, but to me, it seems that you turn into one or the other. You turn into the full-time caregiver, and you possibly lose a part of being that daughter or that son or that husband. Did you see that at all in your process with your mom, especially it sounds like the last 5 years? Was that really where you went from daughter to more professional caregiver?
Absolutely. And I didn't know it. I really had no idea because it happened so slowly.
Okay.
And I was looking up the boiling frog today
Yep.
because
Yeah.
I was going to use that as an analogy, and
yeah.
I've learned that that's a myth. So it's not true.
What is the boiling frog?
The boiling frog, there's a myth
Okay.
that if you put a frog in cold water in a pan and you turn on the stove and it boils over time, that the frog will stay because it
Interesting.
adapts.
Okay.
So it makes sense conceptually.
Right.
But if you have a pan of boiling water and you throw a frog in it, he'll jump out.
Because it's too hot.
Because he
Okay.
knows.
Okay.
Yeah. So no
Interesting.
time to acclimate. So even though it's a myth, the concept is real.
Right.
That when things happen really slowly, you just acclimate and you just do because it's your family. You love them and you just do. So you're not thinking about it until much later. And yes, I can't tell you the time I can't pinpoint exactly when I transitioned from daughter to caretaker. But it was sometime probably in the middle of those 10 years. And it was more clear to me that I did it with my father than with my mother.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that could just be the relationship that I
Like a
had with my
daddy-daughter
father.
relationship?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when mom couldn't be there to take care of my dad the way he always had been, he sort of assumed that daughter would step in and do laundry and take care of things on his behalf.
Okay.
So I did notice that's when the shift started to happen in that relationship.
So asking this is going to be a tougher question. How did your relationship with your brothers change? Did they change, should I say?
It did. Yeah, it really did. And in my case, luckily, for the good.
Oh, good. Okay.
In
All right.
all cases. And we had a good relationship. We were a close family always.
That's great.
Yep.
That helps through these trying times of a life.
Yeah, it definitely does. And even through the trying times, you learn things about each other. You learn what you can and can't say to each other, that people process things differently, and you have to allow that processing to take place in the way that they need it to take place, not the way you need it to take place. So I have one brother who lived in the same city that my parents did, and he stepped up. He was amazing, and he was taking care of mom and dad every single day.
Wow,
he was
awesome.
That's
awesome.
He was my eyes and ears on the
That's
ground.
awesome, yeah.
So we really got very close through that process, and he happens to be my older brother, my oldest
cool.
brother.
Right.
And I would say, we were a close family. We did a lot together, but emotionally, I wouldn't say we were super close growing up.
Okay.
We just did a lot. We always had a good time. We, helped each other with our kids. But we became emotionally close. And to me, that was one of the greatest gifts. And we were able to say some things to each other and really bond
That's
in a
awesome.
way that I don't think I ever thought we would.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we've become very close. Same with another brother who lives also in the state of Colorado, and then I have a brother who lives in a different state, and it was a little bit harder for him because he had been all over the world. He'd been in the Air Force. He had not been home and not really had his child grow up with the rest of the grandchildren,
okay.
and so he has a little different process, and we all got through it really well. We were all able to say, here's what I think, here's what I think, here's what I think. Okay, let's talk about this. And we came to some really good conclusions
That's awesome.
together.
That's fantastic. That's good because, you hear the horror stories. Well, we only hear the bad stuff, right? You never hear the good stuff like this of
Yes.
we became closer. You always hear of that friction that moving mom or dad into a facility or a residence can stress the family out.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it sounds like to me you wanted to know more
I
of
did.
what was going on every day, more of how mom, dad were doing.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about how that motivation drove you into this creation of Serenity Engage?
Absolutely. So while I was tending to every detail of their life, I think it might be. Okay. So while I was tending to every detail of their life, and then we made this decision to transition them, it was like going into a black hole. Suddenly, I had no insight into what was happening. And I'm their POA, as well as one of my other brothers, which means we're wholly responsible for every financial and healthcare decision in their life. Yet, I don't know what's going on unless I'm physically there.
Interesting.
And it's not the facility's fault. I don't think they do this on purpose. I think they're busy. They have not had family who wants to be as involved as many of the, I think, women, especially in my generation, want to be. So when I looked at it, I said, okay, my background in technology and in marketing, I know there's a better way. It feels like this industry is a little bit behind technology-wise. So I started talking to people. I tried to figure out what really tools were available, and what I found is the tools that are available are very good for the back office for these facilities. Hardly any of them are good for the front. And when I talk about the front office, I mean the customer communication. So in reality, the family member is the customer to these facilities most of the time, unless the senior is the one bringing themselves to the facility, right?
Which is probably, I'm guessing, happens less and less now?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. So it's usually a family decision when it happens.
Okay.
It's usually a family decision. And if the family member is a POA and they're responsible, then they are the customer. And I think facilities don't look at them as the customer. I think they look at the resident as the customer.
So do you think you almost have two customers?
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously you're providing care to the resident and the quality needs to match theirs.
Yes.
But do you also think there's a quality element that needs to be given to the family?
Yeah. Yes. And that piece is missing.
Interesting.
It's definitely missing. And if you think about, and I hope this comes off the way I intend it. If you think about daycare, you don't just drop your children off and then walk away and not want to know how their day was and what happened during the day. Same thing for our dogs and animals. We have rover.com. You know where your dog walked during the day.
Okay.
You get a photo of your dog out walking during the day. And if you're a dog person, or if you're a mom and you have young children in daycare, there's an app called Brightwheel in daycare where the daycare providers send you a picture each day. They tell you whether your child ate lunch, if your child had any issues. So it's an online way to communicate.
Okay.
So mom, who is probably at work, may get a picture at 2:00 in the afternoon of her child playing. And what does it do? For us moms, it warms our heart.
You know your daughter's okay.
Yeah. And we go, oh, look, oh, that's so great. And then we may not even know that we had been taking up mental space thinking about our children.
Interesting.
And now it's just gone. And now we can be more productive in our work.
So do you think we have, for your generation, let's call it the sandwich generation, we use
Yeah.
that term, do you think we have lower productivity at work for this generation than some others?
I think it depends. I do think that people who are part of the sandwich generation there's an impact in productivity at work. There's definitely an impact, and I think employers would tell you the same.
So could you make an argument then, just from what you're telling me about Serenity Engage, that it could actually benefit employers from increasing productivity and reliability of their employees?
Absolutely. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there are a lot of articles about the way that employers are handling caregiver employees. So employees who are caregivers to someone in their
Gotcha.
life.
Okay.
Yep. Means that a lot of their mental energy is spent thinking about, oh my gosh, I need to get home and take care of mom. I need to take time off and get her to the dentist. I need to get dad more Depends. I need to whatever. It's just this constant kind of churning. And if they had a way to just have that communication, that's gone. They can focus on work. I get the thought in my head, oh, does dad need Depends? I just send a little message, and then I get a response back from a care team.
Wow. So right there in about, what, a minute to send that text, you freed up maybe 30 minutes of worrying about something?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, and I'm still kind of sorting out who has to comply with HIPAA and who doesn't, because I'm learning some facilities don't have to comply with HIPAA.
And you know what, that probably a great discussion. I think, one of our podcasts should maybe be going on to talk about HIPAA, because I think even my own understanding of it, it's intriguing on the whole who has to comply, who doesn't.
Yeah.
Do family members, do not family members, do facilities, do not facilities. So I think you're not the only one. And I bet there's some really smart professionals who also struggle with that question at times.
Well, that's good. Then I'm in good company. I like that. I like that.
So.
Yeah, so we are HIPAA compliant as Serenity Engage. Really important to me that we're HIPAA compliant, because for those facilities that do adhere to HIPAA, or for those that we're going to communicate about any kind of personal health information, I don't want that to be an issue. I want to know. I want to know, what medication is my dad on? Are they changing some meds? Is there a new growth on my mom that we need to have looked at? This is really important information. And if all we're doing is sending text and photos, that's nice, but you can do that over text. To know that my mom was grumpy today, or that, some of the things that are more about
personal?
their health. Yeah.
Personal almost?
Yes. So their mental health even.
Do you think, prior to you developing this Serenity Engage, there's a lack of the personal connection for the residents at times between family? Like, we get the updates of mom got a shower, mommy. Like, do you think there's that lack of empathy or personal touch in our communication?
It's a really good question. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's an excellent point. I think that for us as family, we want to feel connected. And I think it can be very cold to just get a newsletter once a month. Here's what's happening in the facility, or I have to go to a website, go to the activities, download a PDF, blow it up, because for whatever reason everybody uses a product that I will not name that makes the calendars for activities so small that you have to just blow it up to see just this one day. Well, that's silly. That's super easy to fix with technology.
Like another problem for you to solve.
Yes, it is, and we will definitely be doing that, so that, for example, my brother who lives in another state could set it up to have push notifications. Here's all the activities for today. Now, instead of him calling dad, hey dad, how's it going? Oh, I hate it here. No one ever comes to visit me. The food is terrible. And they're all lies. They're all lies.
The same old probably things you hear every day almost.
It is. It is. And he doesn't mean to lie. It's his reality in the moment. But none of that is true. So instead of sending my brother into a panic over that, now he can see dad's been out, he's been in activities, Kathy was there yesterday with lunch, Jim was there the day before, and he can get the activities and call and have a meaningful conversation. Hey dad, there's a movie on World War II at 2:00. You love that. Why don't you go see that, and I'll call you after and we'll talk. That gives them something to connect on. And now my dad feels loved, my brother feels connected, and that's all it took. It's very simple.
That's wow. That would be nice, I think, especially for, I'm guessing, those that live out of state and who can't be close to mom and dad. I'm guessing that's probably the hardest part.
It definitely can be the hardest part when you're not there. And as they age, they can't answer the phone. Maybe they move to a facility that doesn't have a phone in the room because it's not part of their ability to communicate anymore. this is a way that you stay connected to them.
So with your experience with your mom and dad, what would you say was the most difficult thing you had to do?
I would say, and this is why HIPAA was so important to me, I would say that dealing with the wellness director, and we happen to have a fabulous wellness director who communicated really well, and still it's hard to know because they're taking care of 100 other people.
Gotcha.
Or
Okay.
more sometimes.
Okay.
I never really knew what medications my parents were on
Huh.
unless I go ask, and then
Okay.
they have to go print it out
Okay.
and give you a printed copy.
Okay.
I didn't know what I could be doing better for my parents. And to me, that's part of the collaborative nature. So we have all these people who are specialists in different areas, and they each do different things. So if they're doing different things, but they're not talking to each other, then we don't know what's happening. I'm going to take a break. And
That's strange. Keeps.
it's okay. It'll probably keep us on track, right? How long
It's
have we?
31 minutes right now.
Okay, good. So we'll cut a bunch
Yeah,
out.
we're at
But
that.
so it's the collaborative nature that I'm really looking for. In the end, my goal is to have everyone who touches that senior's life,
Okay.
be it the doctor, the physical therapist, the counselor, the family members, the wellness director, the caregivers, the activities director, all on a single platform communicating and collaborating.
So you'd be able to get, let me just make sure I understand this. You're going to be able to get information from possibly the medical provider, information from the director of their facility or their residence, wherever they're living, information from the activity coordinators who hopefully would interact with mom or dad or my spouse a lot more.
Yep.
And then also from the direct care staff.
Yes.
And then could my family members that visit dad or mom also put a note in there letting other family members know that I was there too?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you could get
Yeah.
essentially everybody that may ever come across your loved one
Yep.
all communicating together.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
In appropriate channels. So
Wow.
not everyone is a POA, so
Okay.
not everyone can see certain information.
Okay.
So yeah, that's exactly it. And it can be little things that make a huge difference. Like, for example, a caregiver who brings a tray to a person, a resident each morning, may notice that resident is not finishing their meal.
Okay.
But if they don't say something to somebody, then it's hard to diagnose, oh, maybe there's something going on. Maybe there's constipation. Maybe there's some stomach issues we need to deal with. Maybe there's depression happening and we need
Okay.
to take a look at that. So that kind of collaboration, if it takes place, it's I would say sporadic.
Okay. So with, we've had a fantastic discussion and you've had a lot of experience for almost 10 plus years with taking care of mom and dad. What do you think, looking back now, the most important thing a family member today could know about next steps for mom and dad? Everything that you've known to this point, what would be the top thing that should be the most important?
Take charge. And that's a big answer, but
Yeah.
in my experience, we often feel that once we transition them, we have a period of relief because we've been so busy taking care of this. So we get this period of reprieve and relief. Someone else has them. Once you go through that, and you need to go through that, it's important. Come back and take charge because no one looks after your loved one the way you do.
That's probably the most accurate way to put it is that, and I think you're going to get a lot of family members that will definitely agree with that statement of no one can do it like I can. And so I think it's important that there is that collaboration, because I think the only way to have a good quality or great quality of care is a collaboration between the professional side of it and the family side of it.
Yes.
And it sounds like Serenity Engage could fill that void that's lacking. Is
Yes.
that a fair way
And to be clear, I don't mean step in and do it yourself.
Okay, that's
Engage the team that you have hired to take care of your loved one. because they are professionals. It is what they do. You're going to learn a lot from them. They're going to learn a lot from you about your loved one. And if you're working together and collaborating, that's when you increase quality of life.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on, is that I think you and I will both agree that what matters most is the quality of care for family members, period.
Yes.
And, that's really what we're doing here. We want to really challenge the norm in senior living. And we hope that you continue to listen. This is, like I said, our second episode of our podcast, Mavericks Challenging the Way We Age, Fostering Ingenuity in Senior Living. So please, if you like what we have to say, subscribe to our podcast and look out for our episode 3 coming out really soon. So have a great day, and I just want to say thank you. It's Francis Lagasse and
Kathy Wells.
Thank you.